Welcome to the C-Suite Sherpa podcast. I'm your host, Brian Marshall, where we shine a spotlight on business experts and great resources for the C-Suite. And speaking of great resources, we have a great resource with us today. Thane Ringler, tell us about your business.
Thanks for having me on, Brian. Appello Partners is the firm I started here in Denver, Colorado. We do leadership development, focusing on helping people become better leaders, which is kind of a hard thing to do. But we focus on lower to middle market organizations, think 5 to 125 people. We're industry agnostic, and we love serving people in this capacity. It's meaningful work that we find a lot of purpose and passion for.
So give me a sense of the kind of work you do with the kinds of clients you work with.
Yeah, it's a mix. So we have different modalities we pull on, including one-on-one coaching, group coaching. We have different workshops and things that we facilitate alongside content through a platform. We use a personality assessment. We have a team performance assessment. And we want to find a way to make it somewhat more objective while also giving people tools that allow them to help themselves in the process. Building a home with a hammer and nails is going to take you a long time. Building a home with power tools helps you do the heavy lifting. And so we infuse leadership tools that help us do the heavy lifting alongside the work.
So what's going on in the life of one of your prospects that, like, we have someone listening to us right now and they're watching this interview and they're thinking, I wonder if Thane can help me. What are typically the things going on in the life of a leader where they wake up one day and realize they need your help?
Well, the foundation of any team working together well is communication. When you feel like you're saying the same thing over and over again, but people aren't hearing it or the actions aren't following, that's a nice indicator of, there may be some gaps here in what I'm saying and what's being received that's hurting our performance and causing frustration mutually. Because usually it's not just one side that's frustrated by that, it's usually two sides. And at the end of the day, we're 50% of every relationship we're in. How are we doing with managing our 50%? And so a lot of the leadership development we do is growing in self-awareness, understanding how we're impacting those relationships, growing in our ability to communicate effectively, and then also learning how to manage conflict, overcome difficulty, overcome difference, and get aligned as a team so we can execute at a high level.
What is it about you and your team, your backgrounds? Do you have special designations or certifications or training? What is it that gives you the skill set to be able to do that kind of work with leaders?
We've got a number of certifications in our group. A lot of the tools we utilize are from a group called Giant. They have a platform and toolkit that is really robust and simple. This stuff doesn't need a rocket scientist to figure out. We want tools that are easily understood and applied. I think those resources are some of the best in the industry. My background's as a professional golfer. I competed for a long time as a high-level athlete, which inherently took a deep dive into self-awareness and saying, how can I lead myself well so I can perform to the best of ability on the golf course? So that's a lot of my context coming into it. We love supporting people in the corporate world. In the business world, it's more nuanced, ambiguous. So we like bringing more clarity and support to people in that area.
Yeah, it's great. I've never had a chance to use this analogy with a professional golfer. In business, we don't practice. We don't have coaches. We just go out and fake it till we make it. Yet in pro sports, pro golf, Tiger Woods, one of the best, had multiple swing coaches. Here's the greatest
Mm.
golfer in the world, and he's got people watching his swing and telling him what he can do better because he's always looking to improve. And so I always tell people, listen, if you don't have a coach or multiple coaches, you're missing a huge opportunity to improve. So it's cool to be able to say that with somebody that's actually been a professional athlete because you get it. And
Totally.
a lot of us in business are too thick-headed and we tell ourselves that asking for help is a sign of weakness. And
Hmm.
so how do you help clients get over that? Do you run into that? And then secondly, how do you help them get past the asking for help syndrome that I think we all have?
I think to answer that first, it is a very common thing. And I think the reality that you don't see when you aren't a professional athlete is that the people that the success of that individual athlete is due to the dozens of people supporting them behind the scenes that people watching don't ever see. That's the misunderstanding we project onto the best in the business, both athlete and CEO side of things. We have to understand that no person is self-made. We all have people supporting us along the way. On the leadership side, being able to tap into that, it's switching the paradigm of leadership through authority, leadership through influences. You actually want to follow me because you know I have a relationship with you built on trust, and that I actually care about you more than just the bottom line. And that's the kind of cultures that we want to create. We also want leadership to be something that isn't about amassing followers, but rather multiplying leaders. We want to actually create more leaders on purpose, not just hold it all to ourselves and get people to follow us like robots.
Yeah, I've been working with leaders for more years than I care to acknowledge. So, what I've seen in my career is that most leaders always think about their success, how big the company is, how much revenue they generate. That's the primary thing they're focused on. And it's not. It's how many leaders have you created? How many people have you lifted up? How quickly have you worked your way out of a job
Mm.
and pushed that down to the next level and then elevated them to a point where they're taking over what you used to do. And that's really hard because we all suffer from this. I built this, it's my company, it's got my name on the door. And all of a sudden, the company doesn't need me anymore. So I'm curious, what do you do when you run into a leader that their entire identity is their business? How do you help them get past that?
That's a really hard one. And that's one that I faced coming out of golf. When I transitioned out, I had an injury that repeated a handful of times over a year and a half. And it took me a solid year-long process to really go through the separating of identity from the thing that I was doing and recognizing who I am as a human being. And I think that's a key difference. What we do, the roles we play, isn't ultimately our being of who we are as a person. It's a processing, the making sense of how our identity is attached to these different roles. The better we get at intentionally multiplying that leadership into others, developing others, supporting their growth, the more meaning and fulfillment we have that's separate from the thing we built. And now it's placed in the human relationships that we have. And that makes all the difference in the world. I think that's a big key of the whole process.
Yeah, I think the biggest part of this is that it's really that playing field between our ears that makes or breaks a leader. I think we have to redefine what a great leader is, what the role of a leader is. You can't create a movement unless you have followers. You can't have a movement unless the followers take over and run the movement.
Hmm.
That should be the model of leadership. That's hard. It's easy to say, really hard to do. Let's pivot.
Yes.
I have one more question for you, and then we'll do something interesting. Biggest challenge that you see in business moving forward? What is the big challenge you see, and then how are you helping clients get over that?
I think a big challenge is generational gaps. As the younger generation comes in, it's always interesting. How do you bridge divides between multiple generations among a workforce? I think we have to be inherently flexible with how we go into working with our people and working with different generations. We can't plug and play a script or a playbook and expect it to work. We have to adapt to the times, new technology, new expectations, new people with different formation coming into our organizations. Having a thought partner, a lot of what we do is coming alongside clients, not as a service provider, but as a strategic partner to lock arms and say, let's work on this together. We're not coming in saying, here's the answer. We're saying we want to support you in the process and help you see more clearly by partnering in that way. I think that's going to be an ongoing challenge. It's only going to ramp up more with the years ahead.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The rate of change is just exponentially accelerated. If you look at what's happened over the last 4 years,
Yeah.
I've done a lot of strategic planning with companies, and the old model of a 5 to 10 year plan doesn't work anymore. Because if you think about this, I always tell people, think about the plan in 2019, right? We're sitting here December of 2019. We're going to plan out the next 5 years. I can guarantee that you did not predict any of the things that have happened in the next 4 years after that.
Mm.
And so this idea of long-term, sticking to the plan and just going for it, it's about adaptability. It's about iteration. It's about the fact that we have to plan faster than the world is changing. And that's the hard part of leadership. And
Yeah.
I love it because if you're not adaptable, if you're not agile, you're going to go out of business. And that just makes it easier for those of us who are to be able to go out and dominate the marketplace. If you're sitting there listening to this right now thinking, I don't do a lot of planning, I don't change that much, pay attention. Call guys like Thane up and his team and reach out and say, hey, I need your help because it comes down to leadership. You're running the business. You're the one making the decisions. Don't tell me your team sucks. It starts with you. To have a great team, you have to start with building great leadership. Thane, I appreciate what you do, respect it, and I think what you're doing is the future of consulting. Well done.
Thank
Now
you.
let's shift gears. Before we finish up, I'm going to ask you how people can get in touch with you, so hang tight. But I want to switch to something a little bit fun. I call it the lightning round. It's really simple. I'm going to ask you some quick questions. Give me the first thing that comes to mind. Don't think about it, and we'll have some fun with it. So you ready to roll?
Ready to rock.
All right, let's go. Coffee or tea?
Coffee, no doubt.
Cats or dogs? No doubt.
Dogs.
If you can only grab one item right when the zombie apocalypse starts, what would it be?
I was gonna say my iPhone because it's the most useful for navigating outside of my home
Okay, we'll go with that until the power goes out.
until the power goes out.
Then
Yeah.
it's a projectile at that point.
Yep.
Favorite quote or phrase that you think about often?
The one I use the most to level the playing field is a quote by Bill Simon, who said, I was born on third base and thought I hit a triple. It's just to recognize that I've been given a lot. I have a lot of privilege, and I'm aiming to steward it and use it well.
Favorite movie?
Probably Saving Private Ryan for someone who's a civilian, never served in the armed forces. It's as close as I feel like you can get through a movie to the brutal experience of it. And it also shows the raw form of humanity in a beautiful way.
Yeah, no, it's a great movie. Favorite streaming series?
Probably Frasier, believe it or not.
Oh, okay. The new one or the old one?
Old one.
The old one's a classic. You know, another one that in the same vein as Saving Private Ryan. If you haven't watched Band of Brothers, that is
Mm,
amazing. That's an amazing
mm,
series. It's not a streaming series, but it's a mini series. So,
yeah.
um, what about a favorite book? Some book that you read that's
Mm.
had a huge impact on you?
Well, I thought of this one based on our conversation today. It's called Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb. It's one of his series of books, and it's a really good expose on the idea of what it means to be adaptable with a future that you can't predict. I think he's a really good thinker, and it's a really cool concept to think about and try to incorporate in our lives given the uncertainty of the future.
Yeah, I'll have to check that one out. I've heard of it, but I haven't read it. So it's a good suggestion. Okay, bucket list. Give me a bucket list item that you've already accomplished.
That I've already accomplished would be getting to play in the Australian Open back in the day when I was competing alongside some of the best like Jordan Spieth or Adam Scott was a real bucket list item for sure. So I think that's one that I'll reflect on fondly.
How about a bucket list item you haven't accomplished yet?
The one that's top of mind is heliboarding in Alaska. I'm a big snowboarder. I love it, and I've always wanted to experience getting in a helicopter and getting dropped off at the top of a mountain and finding your way down. So that's probably number one right now.
You got to do it. You'll regret it if you don't.
Yeah.
Don't wait till you get old. It gets harder to do those things when you get older. One last question. Biggest obstacle that you've personally had to overcome, and what's one big lesson you learned from it?
Yeah, I think transitioning from a failed golf career, I didn't reach the PGA Tour. I didn't accomplish what I set out to, and I left that career path with virtually nothing to show for it from a tangible standpoint. Being able to pivot, pick a new path, and build something meaningful from that, and not lose my sense of self, but find self more so, is something that I'm forever grateful. One of the biggest keys that helped me do that was writing a book coming out of my journey to process and make sense and capture so that I can build upon versus repeat some of the same mistakes. Yeah.
That's a great answer. Our biggest failures in life turn out to be our greatest teachers, but they don't feel like it at the moment when you're going through it.
No, that's for sure.
Awesome. I'm sure there are people watching this that are thinking they got to figure out how to reach out. So, how is it that people can reach out to you? What's the best way?
I'm on LinkedIn. That's pretty active. I'm on other socials too, but you can go to appellopartners.com if you want something on the business side. If you want something on the personal side, I have a website called thanemarcus.com. So those are the two best places to find me. There's contact forms online. Any of those is great.
Awesome. We'll post those on our YouTube channel. If you're watching this, check the description. All the contact information is there for you. I could probably spend another 2 hours diving into the discussions around leadership and your professional career in golf and the transition. Maybe we'll do this again another day, but we're out of time for now. So appreciate you being on the podcast. I appreciate your insights. And I think there are a lot of people out there that can use your help. Thanks for being with us today on the C-Suite Sherpa podcast.
Appreciate you having me.